Welcome, everybody. So, today on the grind, we have Kenny Peddicord, the Director of Cannabis for IDscan.net. Kenny is not only one of the most passionate people we know about the cannabis space and passionate about compliance, safety, and the benefits of the plant, he works with one of the leading digital ID scanning vendors in the space. So, Kenny, welcome. Um, Tell us a little bit about ID scan and what prompted you to, move into the cannabis space.
Sure. Thanks, Manir. So I'm Kenny Peddicord. I work for a company called IDscan.net. Our core ID validation and visitor management product is called VeraScan. Um, we are by far the leading digital ID scanning vendors in the cannabis space. I was selling for ID Scan into the casino industry, what's called the gaming vertical. I'm located in Las Vegas, so that was a natural vertical for me to begin with. And in the process of doing so, I had also sold into when Nevada came online for adult use about 6 years ago. I'd already sold into these, warehouse style Las Vegas dispensaries, the Shangos, Hardin, Planet 13, Reef dispensaries. And what happened is, Las Vegas is known as Sin City. Uh, that can be a misconception for a lot of people. Yes, in fact, if you're not hurting anyone, chances are you can do it legally in Las Vegas. But what people don't necessarily realize is that it will be heavily scrutinized and regulated. So when we went adult use in Nevada, the governor at the time said, I do not want an underage purchaser coming to Las Vegas and buying cannabis at a legal dispensary. I don't want that to be what Las Vegas is known as. So Las Vegas, Nevada became the only state that actually got the language correct in terms of how to make sure that teenagers don't go into dispensaries. They're using technology that evaluates the 2D barcode, that evaluates where the holograms, where the watermarks are. And the way that Nevada did that is they did a smart thing. They reverse engineered and they asked Planet 13 and Harding and Reef dispensaries, what do we need to do to make sure that this happens? Um, and so I'd already sold to those places. They were like, well, this is the technology you need. This is the vendor that you need to recommend. Uh, what happened from there is as all the multi-state operators came to Nevada and Las Vegas, they realized what real ID validation and real ID authentication looked like. It also generated point of sale integrations. So it exposed me to, all the point of sale market, all the multi-state operator market, and we just sort of blew up from there. Found our niche because this type of technology almost exclusively exists in the finance industry. So among banks and among casinos, which is a nephew of the banking industry, uh, most of those vendors did not want to get involved in cannabis because they had, as their customer base, they had Chase Bank, US Bank, Bank of America. They weren't willing to lose those accounts. So, as a privately owned organization, we really found our niche to be able to do a deep dive into driver's license and protect the health and safety of minors within this new and growing cannabis vertical.
Awesome. And so you personally, in conversations that we've had, you are very passionate about the cannabis space. Um, what what particularly, was the moving of the needle to have you, Kenny Petticord, be a big part of the cannabis space?
Well, I mean, the way that I got involved sort of happened organically. Like I said, I was already selling into the casino industry in Las Vegas and just sold. to these dispensaries, these warehouse style, Las Vegas style dispensaries, just as part of my day to day activity. But I've already described the way that that blew up.
Hmm.
Um, Combine that with the fact that I'm uh, very strong advocate of what I would call plant based medicines, cannabis in general. I think that we unequivocally failed as a government with our war on drugs. The idea that that marijuana would be placed in the same category as methamphetamines or cocaine, things like that, is absolutely ridiculous. The science shows that now, and I like to quip that when we say marijuana is a gateway drug, that used to be something that was said back when I was younger. I agree with that. I believe it's a gateway drug. I just believe it's a gateway drug to plant-based medicines for a good reason that exposes us to other things like psilocybin, um, even as far as MDMA, some of the the tremendous psychological benefits that are coming from psychedelic therapy. So, but all that said, why am I so passionate?
Hmm.
Combine that with the fact that I'm also very opinionated about the fact that these are serious drugs. They're
Yeah.
yes, they have tremendous medical benefits, but they also need to be used with a high amount of respect, and frankly, shouldn't be offered to young and developing frontal lobes. And by that, I'm talking about minors. I'm talking about teenagers. Um, this is something that that should be used as an adult, as your brain is fully formed and you're not as easily influenced. So you combine the fact that I'm already passionate about plant-based medicines and where marijuana can take us along that path, with the fact that it is a very serious psychoactive uh, property that should not be exposed to minors. And so that's where I've personally found my niche, the idea of the health and safety of minors. Being able to be the leading person to ensure that that happens.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Your passion and your work, they definitely go hand in hand, and it always shows when you're speaking about what you do. So I appreciate you sharing that personal aspect of why it is you're in the cannabis space. So going back to ID Scan, could you tell me a little bit about how you guys as a company stay ahead of the curve in terms of technology and innovation?
Yeah. So what I mentioned before is what we do, which we have the ability to catch 98% of the fraudulent IDs that are in circulation. Certainly, the vast majority of fraudulent IDs that are used for cannabis purchase. Um, and we've introduced technology um, in an all-you-can-eat form. By that, what I mean is there's multiple ways to truly validate a person's uh, government issued ID, but one of those ways is to use third party services, and that comes, third party services come at a cost. So there's a per scan cost to authenticating IDs in that fashion. We've introduced the idea of doing a deep dive into the holograms, into the watermarks. We have a library. We have a 2D barcode library that evaluates the 15,000 algorithms that are in North American 2D barcodes. Every major government issued ID is formatted to a 2D barcode in North America. Um, but then on top of that, we layer on top a hologram and watermark library, and that's where we're able to get a really high level of confidence. So when these other vendors are going to start coming to the party, in terms of, like I said, like I mentioned before, they were hesitant because they didn't want to lose their federal accounts through the banking industry. But now, we're a $40 billion plus industry, and of course, these other vendors are going to start coming to the space. Well, we've already been here for 6 years, so we know so much more about a very nuanced market. And what I mean by that is every state has a different regulation for how ID verification should occur. There are states that mandate digital scanning. There's also many of those states that mandate, for example, personal information, the acronym known as PII, that they want you to validate a person's ID, but then dump all that data. Well, visitor management systems aren't designed to dump PII. That's in fact that's the essence of what they're built for, is to retain a bunch of customer information. So now VeriScan has settings, where you scan, you evaluate the findings, you report the findings, and you dump the data. Or we've also got anonymized field settings or hash data settings, or we've got settings where you block the ID if it's fraudulent or suspicious. You block it from going into the point of sale. You block that integration. These are all very specific state compliance
Mhm.
mandates that would frankly, the states don't even know how this is going to be accomplished, and they wouldn't be accomplished if ID scan didn't exist, because we're developing to the industry.
Awesome. And so, with all the new markets coming on board, how does ID Scan like properly enter the new market and ensure compliance? Are you working with like the state regulators guidelines? Like what's the process there?
Yeah, as much as possible. The fact is, state regulators and vendors don't always have the best relationships. There's state regulators would, there's a lot of risk involved for them to work with vendors, because competitive vendors will say, "Oh, why are you working with that vendor? You're showing favoritism." So it's just easier for them to just keep vendors at bay, even if our intentions are for the best of the community and for their state. But the fact is, ID Scan has literally every multi-state operator as their customers, save two. So we're
Mhm.
talking about, we've already got 95% of the industry. And what happens from there is we're able to get state regulations. I just got Maryland's ID verification regulations yesterday sent to me by one of the MSOs that are our customers. And of course, their question is, hey, could you take a look at this and tell me what settings I need to have in VeriScan for that? That's a relationship that has organically developed and been nurtured over the last 6 years.
Awesome. Um, yeah, it's exciting with all the new markets coming on board, and what folks and vendors that have done this in many other markets, what they have the ability to bring to new markets. So I love seeing that come to fruition.
Yeah,
What?
if I could interject
Yeah,
for a moment,
yeah,
what's happening is, we're entering a second or third wave
yeah.
of states coming online, so they're able to learn from some of the mistakes. God bless, Colorado and Washington and California, for opening up this new era. But of course, being at the cutting edge, there's some decisions that were made that if they had it to do over again, they probably would have tweaked a couple things. So now when you have a state like Minnesota coming online, they already know that, and I can only speak to what I'm an expert about, but they already know that the language, best of intentions in some of these other states, when they said you have to digitally scan and you have to dump PII. Well, obviously, if you put those two mandates together, what they're saying is you need to use technology to validate an ID, but we don't want you to keep the personal information. Well, the way they wrote the language, you can scan an ID, you can populate it into a point of sale platform, and you can do so by actually allowing more fraudulent IDs to come through that dispensary than if you didn't have the regulation at all. Because there's plenty of open source technology that's going to scan the ID and do some simple math. Well, this birth date was more than 21 years ago, and this expiration date hasn't come to pass. So it must be a real ID. Couldn't be further from the truth. Who carries a fake ID that doesn't say they're 21 and it's not expired? So Minnesota now can learn from that and
Yeah.
go back and say, yes, you have to use digital technology to evaluate an ID, but it needs to accomplish these things. It needs to have a 2D barcode library. It needs to have a hologram and watermark library. It needs to use a scanner that has the ability to take ultraviolet and infrared images, things like that.
Yeah, it's clear, and I always, when we enter new markets, when Curate enters new markets, it's it we come with so much knowledge. Like, and when I say we, like vendors that have been in other markets and have gone through the pain and the heartaches, but also the wins. There's such a wealth of knowledge that um, these folks, and these folks, I mean these vendors that have done this, can share and give to new markets and offer. And what I'm getting at, I just want to see this space succeed and do well. And I think the only way to do this is if we start all talking to each other and opening it up, because sometimes I feel like it's like awesome, a new market's come on board, right? That's 30 steps forward, but then we take like 42 back, and I don't know, it's this kind of like broken record that I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's you're touching on something that also has me passionate about the industry is I haven't been in an industry that's perhaps because it's so young. But I think there's more to it than just that. The initial wave of legal cannabis, I don't think you saw that kind of energy since the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th Amendment. And what I'm talking about, of course, is the prohibition of alcohol and then the reinstatement of legal alcohol. That's the kind of energy that we see. And it's important that people like you exist, hopefully people like me exist, that are trying to stand this industry up correctly, because the fact is the genie's out of the bottle. Like the benefits of marijuana, and as I mentioned, to take it to the next steps, psilocybin and things like that. The science is just it's too definitive at this point. So what we need to do is stand this industry up correctly, because it is controversial. So we
Mhm.
do need to keep, we can all, for the most part, agree teenagers shouldn't be using this stuff. Certainly not when it's illegal. So let's stand up the industry correctly. And furthermore, eventually this is going to federalize. Like the momentum just keeps going and going and going. So we should be learning from the mistakes along the way. And one of the reasons it is slow to federalize is because what the federal government is doing is they're looking at all these individual states and going, what did you get right? What did you get wrong? What did you get right? What did you get wrong? So, I'm very proud to be a Nevadan where we are setting the standard for the health and safety of minors within what is otherwise a very controversial industry.
And so, with so many markets on board, what advice would you give to an operator, a dispensary operator, who may not be compliant right now, or taking, checking, and doing proper ID verification, and they want to rectify the situation?
I would recommend they call me for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, this is not a new storyline. The fact is, I feel for a lot of these retail dispensary decision makers, because the fact that we hear about green tax, the idea that um, licensed retailers, that there's sort of a money grab going on by through taxes, through fines, through technology mandates, and unfortunately, that puts me in that category of someone who could be considered, oh, you're just another way to pick our pockets. The fact is, though, when they actually sit through one of our demos and find out, oh, this is what catching fake IDs actually really looks like. Well, what am I doing in Illinois? You're about 2 to 5% of the people that you're serving are teenagers. That's actually what's happening. So I'm not here to say, what a retail decision maker should or shouldn't do, because that's up to them and the protection of their license and their, and wherever they stand morally. But what I am here to do is say, if you need to catch fake IDs and if you need to be compliant from a PII perspective and all of these things, we've got you. We've already been in this industry for a long time. And the fact is, you know, a lot of times the way that we bring on new customers is they've been avoiding this expense. I mean, I call it a very, very nominal insurance policy myself, but it does, we're not a nonprofit. It does come at a cost. Um, but it doesn't come at nearly the cost of serving a teenager while his or her parents are out of town and they threw a big party at their house and some kid crashed his car on the way home, and then the parents go to that retailer and that gets mishandled, and next thing you know, the Department of Health and Services is trying to shut down the whole enterprise. I mean, that's at, at a minimum, we're talking about Nevada has $100,000 fines. New Jersey has $500,000 fines. So that's why, as passionate as I am, I've really started becoming more consultative, because it's like, hey, you're responsible for your license and how you run your business. I'm not here to tell you, but just please know, if you ever do run into a situation where you prioritize not serving minors,
Mhm.
keep me in mind, please, because we've been doing this for a long time. We can do a lot more than just catch fake IDs. We're very deep into the industry at this point.
Awesome. And so I have a question for you for your advice. What would your advice be, or a tip for a business owner who's trying to grow or scale their business?
From an ID scanning perspective,
Yeah.
the advice that I would have, well, I mean, if you're talking about an enterprise organization, most enterprise organizations, if not all of them, would prefer to have a standard SOP with all their functionalities, and that makes sense, right? Because if you're in 9 different states, you've got 9 different governments to satisfy. You've got 9 different chain of custodies, and somehow you're trying to centralize all that into one, under one umbrella as a corporation. So I would encourage them to take the time, because the fact is, digital ID scanning is not as intuitive as it seems. I've already mentioned the idea that there's a lot of products out there that's scanning IDs but performing no validation whatsoever. So take the time to learn exactly, what you're accomplishing with your digital scanning, and if it's with me and if it's with ID Scan and VeraScan, which is our core product, um, then I would take as much time as possible to help you find out, at what level do you want to catch fake IDs. Yeah, I understand there's hardware expenses, there's expenses in general, there's also volume discounts there. Let's figure out a way to standardize, um, so that you don't get caught in a situation where, of course, I'm not going to name names, but there are, a long list of multi-state operators that have come on board with proper ID validation after something bad has happened in one or more states.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thanks for sharing that tip.
I did want to mention, though, the future, where this is going as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've got all but all but 2 MSOs in North America right now. Soon will be all but one. Um, we have an age-restricted vending machine that I think is going to be where the future is. Uh, there To be clear, there are no municipalities that where vending machines are allowed outside of licensed venues. By licensed venues, I mean either retail dispensaries or consumption lounges. But we have a full age restricted vending, which is using the technology that I have previously mentioned, combined with matching a person's live image of their face to the cropped image on their ID. We're putting that in the dispensaries uh, to reduce payroll, to offer line busting. There's a cool factor to it, but we're also doing it as a proof of concept because someday these machines will, in fact, be placed outside of pharmacies, outside of health clubs, inside casinos and malls. So that's where the future is headed. There's certainly speed bumps along the way that I could share if someone wanted to reach out to me. But just wanted to let some folks know about where the future's headed uh, with cannabis sales and ID scan technology as well.
Amazing. Looking forward to that. I love tech advancements in this space. I also like, new toys to play with. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the other avenue that we need to address is, frankly, is online ordering. Um, there's a lot, as I mentioned, 2 to 5% of the customers that are going into dispensaries nationwide are failing our authentication. So we've we've got a good strategy on how to combat that. What's not happening is a proper workflow for online ordering for BOPUS and delivery. It's a very there's the digital paper trail um, is subpar. Certainly, the age verification portion is subpar. So that's where my focus will be primarily going forward. I feel like we've got a good grasp on the brick and mortar health and safety of minors issue, and now I need to pivot and clean up some of the frankly, the whole online ordering market is very relaxed. I don't even have the metrics on it yet, but I know that it's in worse shape than the brick and mortar situation as far as serving minors are concerned.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that as well. So, Kenny, thank you for participating in the grind. I loved hearing about what ID Scan is up to and how it relates to other markets. How would our viewers get a hold of you and find updates on ID Scan?
Sure. So my name's Kenny Peddicord. It's my email address is kpeddicord@idscan.net, and I think you'll be able to post that, right? I don't want to necessarily take the time to spell my very long last name, but so kpeddicord@idscan.net, Kenny Peddicord on LinkedIn. My phone number 312-927-0845. A lot of people don't give out their phone number, but I'm willing to talk about this stuff all day, anytime. Um, and like I mentioned, I'm sure you'll be posting that, so I appreciate it.
So, Kenny, thank you for joining the grind. I appreciate all these topics and you sharing your passion and your knowledge and letting us know what you're up to.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.